Perfect, thank you. I did a whole lecture on Monday without pressing record. It's Tuesday morning, I have to pre-record the whole thing. I'm not doing that again. So, signs, units of meaning, made up of a signifier and a signified, that have very often conventional meanings for us which help us navigate the world itself. That's really Saussure's contribution to semiology right there. Defines the sign for us, breaks it up into its constituent parts, and shows us how it's deployed in everyday life as a conveyor of meaning to us. But we need to go further than that. And the person that takes us further is the French structuralist thinker, Roland Barthes. And Barthes is extremely important in semiology. Barthes takes a different approach to the sign itself and gives us two other concepts by which we have to think of signs. Denotation and connotation. Basically it says that the sign has two levels. He's not arguing that it's made up of a signifier and signified. He retains that. He says that at that conceptual level we are thinking in two ways. Denotation is the obvious literal meaning of a sign. What he calls first order signification. So a dog is this furry thing. Connotation is the wider cultural meaning, or what he calls the code, the second order of signification. So dog has a variety of meanings within a society. When we see a dog, it is not just dog that comes to mind, we link it to other cultural meanings that we have for that animal. I think, okay, how are you going to explain this? Well, I'm going to explain it by how Roland Barthes explains it. So in his 1957 work, or sorry, 77 work, I should say, confusing his stuff here, the rhetoric of the image, Barthes uses this image to illustrate what he means by first order and second order signification. This is an advert for the Italian food company Panzani. I don't believe Panzani exists anymore, but 70s, 80s, they were kind of, in the US mostly, a big sort of purveyor of authentic Italian cuisine. By that you can mean mass-produced bollocks, right? No Italian person would ever eat it. Barthes says here, in this image, there are two levels of meaning going on. Do you understand what he means? Okay. So, using this image, Barthes illustrates what he means by levels of meaning. At the denotative level, what do we actually have? We have packets of pasta, a tin, a sachet, some tomatoes, onions, peppers, mushroom, all emerging from a half-open string bag in yellows and greens on a red background. Does that sound a reasonable kind of explanation of what's going on in this image? So, the level of denotation, literally what there is. You don't have to go any further than that, just identify what there is here. At the individual level of signs, we have, a photographic representation of a tomato, and that signifies the concept that we have of a tomato. We don't think that's an apple, we don't think that's a pear, we don't think that's an orange. We know it's a tomato. So you can see how the original structure that Ferdinand de Saussure gave to us about the sign is retained in Barthes' analysis. At the denotative level, we are simply identifying the things that are in the image themselves. At the connotative level, we are taking those denotative meanings and understanding them in the wider context. What is going on here is the half-open bag, the fresh goods. Somebody just come back from the market. And what does that mean to us? Fresh, domestic preparation of food, wholesome, healthy, not buying mass-produced, even though this is mass-produced rubbish, right? Italianicity. These are foodstuffs that we associate with Italy very closely. But what else is going on in the Italianicity here? How else would I look at that and think, ooh, Italy? the colours. Red, I know it's yellowy, not quite white, but there's some white here. We have reds and we have green. And the colour of Italy's flag is? Red, white and green. Yeah. So there's a very deliberate construction going on here at the denotative level to trigger at the connotative level the idea of Italianness, Italianicity as Barth calls it. The idea of a total culinary service is really important. This company gives you it all. You don't have to shop around for your Italian food. These dudes will do it all for you because they're giving you an image of an entire meal in its unprepared form, I guess. I mean, I'd take that and make an absolute mess of it, but somebody who's good at cooking could do something decent with this. And it's in a still life form. Now, can anyone tell me why that's important? What do we mean by still life?
Kind of like cooking as an art.
Fabulous. I can put it better myself. Cooking is an art because it's mimicking a distinct art form that we can identify. We identify the idea of a still life. You know, somebody might draw a still life. In this case, somebody's taken an image, a photographic image, in a still life manner. And that in itself is a connotation. So denotation, what's there, connotations, what the meanings are of those things combined. And that's put at the bottom, yellow, green and red colours here is supposed to signify Italianicity. Any questions? Fantastic. So Barth adds a little bit to this. Now, let's have a go. Let's have a go as a group so we can make mistakes and laugh at one another. That's important. Mocking others is important. Are you all familiar with this product? Lovely. Okay, we're going to strip it down. We're going to look at denotation first. What is in this image? And the great thing about doing this exercise is that people always jump ahead. So let's start. Conventionally, we read a message from left to right, usually. But we're going to read it the other way here. We're going to read it from top down. So, what do we have up here? Mountain. You've ever seen a mountain that looks like that? What do we have up here at a denotative level? See, like kind of blue irregular triangles. I don't see a mountain. Stop looking with your eyes to meaning and start looking just at what there is. We have some blue triangles. Blue, important. What do we have under them? Nothing. Nothing signified by white. We have a white background. Important. The background of an image is very important in conveying meaning. What do we have here? Around. Can anyone identify what this is? Any?
Pink.
Pink?
Pink
We know the colour.
Pink circle.
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways we could describe the shape. An ellipse, a circular thing, an oval of some kind. But it's pink and it encompasses what's going on. And then we have a word, a sign, Evian. Evian is in what colour? Red. Red. Okay. That is the denotative aspect of the image. So, let's forget about how these combine for meaning just yet. As I said, the printed blue triangles signify at the level of a sign, the level of the denotation, they're just blue triangles, but we add the meaning in. We interpret them as mountains because we have a shared conceptual understanding of what a mountain should be in a particular concept. We're adding that on top. When we look at it, with less biased eyes. That don't look like a mountain. It's just a weird looking triangle. But we instantly put it together in this way. Mountains is actually the denotative meaning of this. The denotation, how we link it to other things, is mountains. And let's extend that denotative content. What do mountains mean to us?
Nature.
Natural, definitely. Anything else? Good. Yeah, people who climb mountains and that, they're into exercise, they're into fitness. Unless you're from South Wales, then everyone in the world goes to Pen-y-Fan because you have to have a photo on that. And like every dating profile in South Wales has that photo. Fresh, again. Fresh in terms of air, fresh in terms of water that comes from mountains. You can see how the use of the mountain here is telling you a lot about the product itself. It is a natural, fresh water product. Evian's a really interesting company. In 1989, Evian was sued for millions and millions of pounds in, at the time, French francs, because it was discovered that they weren't giving you fresh water. They were filling their water from the tap and selling it, labelled as fresh water. This has been going on for years. They had a factory in the south of France where they basically turned the taps on and filled up all the water and then sold it to people at like 10 times the cost that it actually cost to fill the water. It's not great, but I like it. At a basic level, I love that idea. So, in an image like this, you will have connotative meaning, but here we have a denotative meaning. Freshness, naturalness, healthiness, those are the connotations that come from it. So what Bart encourages us to do is stick with Saussure's structure to a certain extent. It applies these different terms. And the reason why he does that is very important, as we'll see in a moment. Denotation, what there is, connotation, what the meanings of these things are. We've got an Evian. Isn't it still, you've got Evian bottle right there, right?
Yeah.
Is it still exactly the same? Oh, they've changed the mountains.
Yeah.
Interesting, and they've got rid of the ring. I have to update the slides for next year now, I've got it now. That's at least 2 minutes work. Shit, bad times. Are we all good with denotation and connotation? Like, it's an extension of what Ferdinand de Saussure was doing. So, we have here, I like this image, because it's got a monkey in it. I think that's basically. This monkey's kind of wool. I'd love to, you know, I wish I could live life like a monkey. It sounds like a sweet deal. But, sadly, I just got treated like a monkey by my employer. Never mind. We have here the company Bosch. I just love saying that word. It's a great word to say, Bosch. Bosch. Sounds like something from a comic book, it's like Bosch. What are Bosch trying to achieve? Let's think about this in a very, very direct way. What are Bosch trying to do?
Isn't the monkey trying to like recreate the window?
Whoa, way too far, Em. What are they actually trying to do?
Give you some entertainment.
Sell you a washing machine. Let's be fair. Let's not get into the meaning yet. When we are doing any kind of textual analysis, it is important to note from the outset, before you jump into your clever little analysis, which is what you were going to do, note what the purpose of the text is for. Some texts are there to inform. Some are there to entertain. This isn't really there to do either of those things. It's there to promote a product the company wants you to purchase. There is a very direct meaning to this, therefore. It is trying to get you to buy. It's looking at you and thinking, you've got money. Come buy my product. And I'm going to persuade you in this text that you should buy this product. The purpose of an advertising text is rhetorical. It is always there to persuade you about doing a particular course of action. So, now, we can go into Emma's analysis. How is it persuading us?
By telling you it's good technology because it's evolved.
Oof. How's it telling you that without looking at the word at the top?
Like, from monkeys to humans,
Superb.
we've become
We have.
lazy.
Just as I said earlier, there's a conventional reading here. This is a text which is meant to be read left to right. Our eyes usually go from left to right on a text. And here we start with our friend. Can anyone tell me the genus of this ape? Is it a chimpanzee or something? Does anyone know? It is a chimpanzee. I'm getting some notes, so I'm going to go with chimpanzee. I don't. I'll be honest with you. Monkeys ain't my field. I'm not cleared up on monkeys. Cool, though I think they are. Especially Coco. Monkey was cool. Now, we have a chimpanzee. What do we know about chimpanzees? So we have identified it here. Some denotative content, right? Chimpanzee. Using Bart's thing, yes, we've got sign and signifier. We've got the sign, which is a visual representation of a chimpanzee. Signifier, we know it's a chimpanzee. Denotative content, the chimpanzee. Connotative content, what do we know about chimpanzees? What do they want us to draw on about our meaning of chimpanzees here? Related to humans. So it draws back to Emma's point. Yeah, absolutely. Related to humans. But related in what sense? I've got cousins that look like this, but I don't think that's the relation that we mean. In an evolutionary sense, chimpanzees are our what? Ancestors, predecessors, right? So in an evolutionary concept, they come before us. Now, in my understanding of evolution, again, I'm not a biologist, right, but I did kind of go to biology school. I'll be honest with you, I spent most of the time with my head attached to the gas taps, because I used to get that made school better. Again, don't do it. So for my limited recollection of biology lessons, because it would be very limited at this point, they're not actually our ancestors. In fact, it's like evolution works in parallel, right? So we might have a shared ancestor with the chimpanzee, but the chimpanzee has evolved in a different way to us. But the common story that we have is that they are our predecessors in the evolution range. And I think, Bosch aren't going for scientific accuracy here. They're going for that story, yeah? So, as we go across, what is our denotative content over here? I'm not trying to trick anyone. What do we see? A washing machine. What is that denotative content trying to tell us in relation to the other denotations in here? What is the washing machine's purpose?
It's advanced technology.
Superb. We are moving from, if you like, primitive to advanced. We don't need a representation of a human. Instead, we have a representation of a human activity, washing clothes. And we're moving from primitive, unevolved to evolution, Bosch washing machines. It's not a subtle sort of thing, this, all right? What is that then trying to create? Connotations of advanced, sophisticated, technologically up-to-date, technologically state-of-the-art. I have no idea if this washing machine is any of those things. I don't have one. Washing machine is just, you just shove the stuff in, you put the powder in, turn the dial. Doesn't seem that advanced to me. Like, it's fairly straightforward activity, really. Although, for some unbeknownst reason, a lot of the people that I'm friends with can't work these. Because, yeah, men seem to have a problem with working these. They're really not that difficult. This is a very, very basic advert. Telling us, or trying to persuade us, that the purchase of this particular piece of Bosch technology is an indication that we have evolved as people. That if you go Bosch, you are, what, better than a monkey? Yeah. But also implicit in that is you are better than others who have more monkey-like washing machines. You know, Hoover, Windows, they're for monkeys, right? But no, Bosch is the boss. Like, no, Bosch is the stuff. There's nothing subtle going on here. This is why I kind of like it as an advert, really. And it does ask us to draw on cultural meanings of things to get the meaning out of it. But this is a very conventional technique in advertising to create messages like this. To create messages which move and indicate progress is a very, very straightforward way of doing things. There are some other things going on here. Now, to introduce another term which Bart uses, this signifier chimp is what we call polysemic. Now, most signs actually are polysemic. In fact, Bart would go so far as to argue that all signs are polysemic. There's been some criticism of that view, but I think to a large extent Bart is right. But we need to unpack what polysemic means. Can anyone tell me if you see the prefix poly before a word, what is it referring to?
More than one.
Many. Superb. Yeah. So poly, many. Semic, meaning. If we have a sign which is polysemic, it means it has many meanings. Bart draws attention to signs have many different meanings, just as the sign dog might have many different meanings according to the context that it's in. Because I could say, like, there's a dog. And you're like, oh yeah, it's a dog. 4 legs, furry, woofs. And then I could say, like, you know, there's a dog. And you'd be like, oh, that means Leighton's a real piece of shit. Yeah, true. So, dog is a polysemic sign. All signs, to a certain extent, are polysemic. What sign anchors the meaning of the chimp here? Polysemic signs often need other signs to direct us to the meaning that we're supposed to get. There is something in this image that tells us that chimp here has this specific connotative meaning of a relation to us in the evolutionary chain. What is it? I've actually given the answer. There's a different sign altogether. And it's at the top.
Evolution.
The word evolution. That word is deployed here to get us to think about that image in a particular context. So it removes the polysemic aspect of the sign itself, directing us towards this. If we see the word evolution, if we're looking at this image and thinking, what, have Bosch lost the plot? What is going on here? And then you look at the top, ooh, now again. He wants me to think about that like that. Polysemic signs have their meaning anchored by other signs. Therefore, that tells us that the construction of an image, in a media sense, is always of multiple signs. Multiple things being pulled together in order to construct a meaning of some kind. It's not just one thing. Anyone know what the most liked and viewed image on Instagram is? Just a picture of an egg, yeah? Now that's an interesting, non-polysemic, well actually, I suppose it's a mental polysemic image. Do you know why?
Well, I suppose because I would say, like,
That was exactly right, yeah. Kylie Jenner had the most viewed image, and so some guy got really pissed off with that. And so he put a picture of an egg, and then like it became the most viewed image. The point I'm making here is that that isn't anchored by anything. That image of an egg, the most viewed image on Instagram, actually doesn't have any anchoring going on, which is kind of interesting. But what we often do when we're sharing images on something like Instagram is that we use textual elements outside of the image to anchor a meaning in particular ways. We use hashtags, or we write a description of what's going on in order to remove ambiguity and to direct people as to what we're trying to say within that image. So signs are polysemic, and something else will anchor the meaning for us. Now, when we think about the second, I don't know why I've repeated this. I guess it's really fucking important at the end of the day, and it is actually a very important point. The second order of signification, the connotative order, Bart calls the myth. Can anyone define what a myth is? It's probably a word I'm sure you've all encountered. But can anyone give me a shout as to what you think myth means? Legend. Interesting.
Story.
Story. I think a myth is a story which might well be associated with legends, yeah?
Not proved.
Not proved as in made up.
Not necessarily, just not proven to be.
Okay. I understand what you mean, yeah. I think I can put all these together to get close to what it is. A myth is a story. A myth is a story that we tell, often in the form, takes forms like legend, for example, in order to convey a particular meaning about something, but it doesn't have to be the actual meaning of something. Myths and historically have been told to carry particular moral messages about how we should live our lives. But the myth itself does not have to be an account of something which was actually happened or an accurate account of something that did happen. It can be changed in order to convey the meaning that we want it to convey. So Barth identifies myth as a very, very important aspect of textual communication. All semiotic communication is there to tell us a story. And this, as I said earlier, is the point that we sometimes miss out on when we're thinking about this stuff. You think, okay, I understand how this has been put together. I understand why it was done like that. So I understand denotation, and I understand partially connotation. But there is a further point. Barth is telling us that every visual image is constructed in order to tell us a particular story, the myth. And the way he says it in that way, the myth, is in itself an important sign. He is telling us that what is communicated doesn't have to be accurate, doesn't have to be true, can be take the form of a legend, but it is a story. And stories don't have to be accurate, they don't have to be true. They are there to serve a particular function. And as you won't be surprised, having done this module for 10 weeks now, the function of the myth is always ideological. For Roland Barthes, myths are there to link back to what we were discussing last week, power and ideology, and how this has been pulled together in order to give us a particular ideological message. In this case, the myth of this image is that Bosch is the pinnacle, the final evolution of technology. Bosch is the best in terms of domestic technology. Spoiler alert, they're not. I mean, I'm sure they're very good at what they do. But are they the best? Well, that's just a marketing opinion at the end of the day. That is not something which is true. How do you even prove that? I don't know. You test their products against other people's, I'm sure they do that, and I'm sure they win at some things and don't at others, because that's the nature of that kind of stuff, right? Are they the very best? How do you define best? Best in this case might be how clean your clothes get. Best, as far as I'm concerned, is how much it costs. Because I'm a tight ass and I want to, I don't want to be spending my money on washing machines. I want to be spending my monies on hookers and blow. That's where I'm interested in best. So, this discussion that is taking place within this text is what Roland Barthes calls a myth. When you're doing a semiotic analysis, it is very important, therefore, that you go systematically through these terms. Signs, signifier, signified. I'm going to chuck a few more words at you which we'll go through tomorrow. Iconic, indexical, and symbolic signs. Those are developed by Charles Sanders Peirce. And in the seminar tomorrow I will talk about these for my group, but these are things you can look up in any textbook about them as well. They're just different kinds of signs. They differentiate what Saussure was talking about. Denotation, connotation, myth, ideology. It's almost like a shopping list. If you're doing semiotic analysis in an academic sense, you've got to tick all those bits off. You have to cover them all. And you've got to show that you know what these things mean. So you've got to relate back. Roland Barthes did this, Ferdinand de Saussure did this, Charles Sanders Peirce did this. If you do all those things, you cannot fail to get a very good mark in an essay about semiotics. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible not to do well. Unless you completely misinterpreted the meaning of the text you're looking at, which is really unlikely, because you've been interpreting and deciphering and decoding text since the day you were born, quite frankly. You're all very, very skilled in it. So there's no way that you can go wrong. But one thing I always have to reiterate to not just you guys, I have to do it in second years, I have to do it in third years, I have to do it with master students. Unless you deploy the terminology correctly, you're not actually doing a semiotic analysis. Semiotics, as Ferdinand de Saussure said, is the science of the life of science. Therefore, you have to use the terms and the theory in the right way. So just do an essay and say, well, the writing's in red, which means anger. Get the fuck out of here. Tell me why it means anger. You've identified denotation, and then you spring in a connotation, but you just ain't used the terms. But you've got to show that you have knowledge of those things. But once you do that, this is very, very straightforward as far as I'm concerned. Semiotic analysis is a really, really useful tool. And it says to me more than anything that this is the one part of theory that I'm going to teach you guys in this module, which you are absolutely going to use across the board. You use semiotics in film. You use it in PR. You use it in journalism. You will use it if you're doing one of the practical modules where you're making video or you're making web-based content. You are going to be using it. I mean, kind of the only stuff you don't use it in is in the theory modules, and even then, you've got to use it. So you are always going to be talking about semiotics in some form or another. What depresses me about it is that people forget that you need to use the terminology and the theory in the right way. Because it ain't hard. It really isn't. And if you want to do semiotics for assignment 4, I would encourage you to do so, because those who get it right nearly always get between 78 and 82%. Those who get it wrong get somewhere usually between 38 and 42%. So use it right, just as I've told you to do it now, and you will do well. There's really not a way that could mark you down. If you deploy all the theory in the correct way and identify the meaning of a text, link it, so you identify the denotative, you identify the connotations, you link it to the myth, and therefore that goes to an ideology, what can I do? How could I mark you down? Well, I didn't like the font. Not even I'm that petty. So it is almost like a surefire way. But you do have to stretch it to myth and ideology. In order to do well, you've got to go that far. Because it's myth and ideology, they mean, myth really means something which we take as normal. We've encountered this earlier in the module with Gramsci's concept of hegemony. A myth in this sense is really, Barth is using a different term to describe hegemony, really. What the semiotic approach does is a way of denaturalizing meanings and of showing how they're always fabricated. That's why it's a critical tool in media studies. And it links those myths and those constructive forms to ideology and power, which is why I've been banging on about ideology and power for so bloody long in this module, because it's everywhere. You're never going to escape it. So you have to know about it. Now, my tips here. Semiotics can seem very, very straightforward. And do you know what it is? I'm not going to mythologize myself here. Semiotics is really straightforward. But you have to use the terms in a really exact way. You have to understand what they mean and use them correctly. That's not much. Honestly, that's not much work. There's not much involved in doing that. Once you can do that, you can go hog wild. Always read about it, and Gillian Rose's Visual Methodologies is the best book ever written about this topic. Millions of copies in the library. I will get you a copy on PDF if you ask me for one, because I have one. No problem for me to do that. I've put a chapter of it up on Canvas for you for this week, which will give you everything you would actually ever need to know about semiotics for 3 years of your degree. It's all in that chapter. Think about always using semiotics to analyse other kinds of media texts throughout your degree. This will help you when you're encountering text, be it in film studies, journalism, PRs, I went through the list. Always be thinking about semiotics when you're doing that. You bring levels of understanding to your work at that point. And always combine semiotics with ideology in order to strengthen your critique of something. If you don't do that, you don't really have a critique. You're just doing some basic identification of stuff. But the underlying meaning is so very important. Oh yeah, I finished on time. Do you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to do a video for you guys, which I'll put up next week about the essay questions, so I don't have to do it in class. But I will give you a heads up.